This is episode 18 of the Middle-earth In Mercia podcast, Warhammer World Doubles 2024. And as usual, I am your host, Sonny.
And I'm your co-host, Ash.
And it's good to have us both back here for another episode of the podcast. As we promised, I know we have been putting out some other content. We put out our first proper video preview the other day, which if you haven't checked it, go have a look on YouTube. I've not put that up on Spotify because the audio was a bit off, but as always when we do something new, it's a bit of a learning experience, so it'll be better for next time. But yeah, we told you we're not walking away from the podcast format. We enjoyed doing it. This is our bread and butter, and we have plenty of tournaments this year to take you through. So as I've said, this is going to be Warhammer World Doubles 2024. So as those of you who are old hands of the podcast may remember, way back in 2023, it was actually the first tournament that the podcast ever attended was Warhammer World Doubles. So for us, this was kind of cool. I know I was going back with Ash rather than Chris, but it was kind of cool after 2 years of learning and experience to see how that's impacted how I viewed it as a tournament, how I played the tournament, and so on. So, Ash, for those listeners that maybe aren't familiar with a doubles format or just need a refresher, why don't you take us through how a doubles tournament differs to perhaps a singles tournament?
Yeah, I guess there's a different match play set up, so there's different scenarios for doubles. So you go as a full army, but you're technically two separate armies, where generally you would roll a dice to find out who would go in, who would be Team A and who would be Team B, and then you would deploy based on that. Unless you take a Legendary Legion, and then your leader is always Team A. And then you're obviously playing alongside someone and not just thinking about it on your own. So yeah, I think it makes a good change to playing singles because you can ask each other for questions, but sometimes I think you can also fall trap to maybe asking too many questions, and you can sort of untie yourselves instead of just playing the game. But yeah, I found it quite good fun. It was my first ever doubles.
I sort of explained to you before we went, having done a couple of these before, that it's more of an event than a competition. It's more about the vibe, and that previously it had been much more relaxed, and it was more like you and me were going for a good time. Not that we don't have a good time at normal tournaments, but you get what I mean. It was more relaxed. It's like a friendly rather than a tournament.
Yeah, and obviously it doesn't go towards your GBHL rankings. The only thing is you get a cool trophy at the end if you win a Warhammer World tournament. So there was always that to play for.
Yeah, so with that in mind, me and Ash sort of had a sit down and we had a bit of a discussion about armies we maybe thought, was something we could potentially play together, and we drew a bit of a blank in terms of common armies, didn't we, Ash?
Yeah, because I think you've got predominantly evil armies and I've just got Rohan. So we thought, let's start a new army, which I think was ambitious, but I think we pulled it off. I think the army looked really good on the table.
Yeah, so after a bit of discussion, I think we both sort of agreed, what could potentially be decent at a doubles tournament without being, obnoxious and unfun. And also what was one that we quite liked the models. And we settled on Uglut Scouts, didn't we?
Yeah, and that was an army I was sort of looking at moving into anyway. Starting to build an Isengard force, so it was a good one to pick, I think. Especially using the Uglut Scouts Legion rules, they came in. I think they would be quite good because it's like having semi-cavalry without having the expense of having cavalry models.
Yeah, so to interject quickly in there, for those of you who aren't familiar with Uglut Scouts, this centres around a legendary legion of the party of Uruks and Orcs who have taken Merry and Pippin and are ambushed by Airmere. So their big thing is that all of the Uruks can get Marauders, which is a 2-point upgrade to movement to 8 inches. You get that for free. And you also get animosity. So when an Orc and an Uruk are engaged with the same model in base contact, if you win, you both get +1 to wound. So some nice little bonuses there. And yeah, we thought we could bring reasonable numbers, so it would be decent on that front. And I think the plastic models have quite a few of the downfalls of many of the plastic models, but are quite characterful, and there are some quite nice painting guides online, aren't there, Ash?
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of different ways you can make them look unique and not just look the same. I really like the Scouts models over the Warrior models for Isengard. I think, like you say, they've got some nice poses, some varied poses, and you can make them look quite unique.
I do have to say that Mal here, I hate the model. I hated painting it. I hate the posing. I hate everything about it. I hate the fact it's made out of fine cast. But all the other, I think the drummer, the banner, the captain with the two-handed axe, Ugluk, they're all pretty good metal models for your characters.
Yeah, I think so. And I've just painted my Ugluk, and it's so much detail on there. It looks really cool as the leader of your army.
So to just add in before we get into the tournament, because this is intended as like a hobbyist tournament, I would say, in that 50% of your points do not come from the tournament itself. The way the scoring works is you have a minor major victory matrix, which works exactly as it is described in the match play guide, that if you score more than double your opponent, it's a major victory, no matter how small the scoring is. So you could get a maximum of 50% of your scoring from that. And then everybody has 2 votes for best sporting and 2 votes for best army that they've played. And you're able to give them to 2 of the games you've got. So the idea being you've played 5, 2 of them will get 2 votes for one and 2 votes for the other. And each of those, each vote that you get, because there are 5 games, is worth an additional 5% of scoring. So for instance, if you lose all 6 games, but you get all the votes, then you could potentially still have 50% scoring out of 100. The idea is that you need to both win games and pick up votes from your opponents. So me and Ash probably, as opposed to most tournaments, I would say we put way more effort into the hobby side of things than we did the gaming, Ash, didn't we?
Yeah, I think so. And I think it's the first time we've ever gone with a display board, which you spent a labour of love making, and it looked really cool. But we'll go into more depth. That maybe it was a bit of a waste of a time. But I guess you've got a nice display board now to keep your models on in your cabinet. I think it's the first time we've fully gone all out with bases, adding some flowers in there, grass, leaves, and really thinking about the theme of the overall army, not just putting a bit of basing on there and a bit of grass here and there just to make it look semi-realistic. I think we actually spent time painting and basing the models.
Yeah, we don't go crazy with practice games or anything, mainly due to time constraints, and that we're usually doing a bit of painting and podcasting that we're trying to fit in. But if we're doing a new points level especially, we normally get together at least twice, and depending on the points level, maybe we get 2 games in each. So maybe, if we're going to a 400 pointer and we've never done one of them before, we might have had 4 practice games with our proposed lists, at that points level and got a feel for it. But I think, unfortunately, and this may have bit us a bit, but we'll go into that later, we didn't actually do any practice games for this at all. So Ash had never done a doubles game, and it had been nearly 2 years since I did one. But we were exchanging photos of bases, trying to match them. We were talking about how do you go about painting the white hand of Saruman. We spent a lot of time working on our paint scheme. Because we had, I think it was like 53 models, wasn't it, between us, Ash?
54 models, yeah.
54 models that we painted due to the fact I had flu in the run-up to it. I did all of mine in about a 2-week period, and I think Ash did his in about a 3-week period. And and then we did the display board to match. Which, I would never call that a waste of time, because I'm definitely going to take armies with similar basing that I can take on that. And I think at smaller tournaments that give me a chance for my models to shine, because I have won a best painted before. I'm not an artiste, but I'm an army painter. I like to have a nice theme across a number of models. And I think we did that really well with this army. I'm really proud of it. I think... ours, in terms of uniformity and the fact that they were 2 armies painted by 2 different people, which wasn't the same for everyone, though. There was a lot of people that were maybe using one partner's army just from casual conversations we had. I think we did a really good job of that, Ash, and I'm quite proud of what we achieved.
Yeah, I think so, and I think we got enough difference in there that they didn't look like the same model painted by different people. It was like I put a bit of uniqueness in there, you put a bit of uniqueness in there. So on the tabletop, although they look coherent, you could tell whose model was which I thought was really cool. And yeah, we won't cover it in this podcast, but in the next podcast we'll cover that I got a special nomination for the first time we took it to a single. So
before we crack on with the tournament, though, I have just remembered we haven't had any correspondence, but I missed out when I did the shorts episode. So now I've got Ash here. I just wanted to take the opportunity to say thank you to Rich. No last name, but Rich wrote on our Buy Me a Coffee, Buy Me a Beer. Loving the content and the different views you guys have from other podcasts. Great content. And yeah, he's bought us a beer as one of our official supporters. So yeah, from me and Ash, Rich, thank you so much for, it says so much about in terms of how you value the content to do something like that. So I really do personally appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, Rich. It just keeps us going and makes us realise people are listening to our little rambles on about things.
Yeah, and if, like Rich, you'd like to be mentioned on the podcast or to show your support for the podcast, you can go into our links on this episode and click on our Buy Me a Coffee link, and it's over there, and you can throw something in our tip jar if you feel so inclined. If you don't feel so inclined, but you are still listening, I would ask if you can subscribe on your platform of choice, whether that's YouTube or Spotify, and give us a like or a review. We'd also really appreciate that. It helps us appear on the charts and whatnot, and spread the podcast to more people. So yeah, we'd appreciate that if you can. Ash, I was surprised you didn't interject there with your like and subscribe.
Yeah, like and subscribe on YouTube, comment, start a conversation with us, and we can not have to think about topics on our own. If you've got some topics you want us to discuss,
that's
all to the podcast, and we can discuss them on the podcast.
Yeah, that's always good when people write to us. That is one of my favourite things when we are lucky enough to get direct interaction with you. And you can do that via the comments, or you can email us at middleearthinmercia@gmail.com. But that's enough of that. It is time to go on to the tournament and the nitty-gritty of it. So, Ash, we've alluded that Uglook Scouts was what we took. Do you want to take the listeners through our army list?
Yeah, so it's obviously Ugly Scouts, 54 models with 17 bows and a break point of 28 models. So Army A, which was, we decided that you were going to lead, Sonny, because it was the sort of the army that would go in the centre more and probably need the more skill and let the noob sort of take up the back like I did. You had 28 models and 9 bows. Your leader was Ugluk, who is also the Legendary Legion leader. We had a banner in there who was a marauder. We had 6 Uruk Scouts with bow who were marauders, 5 Uruk Scouts with shield who were also marauders. Then we had an Uruk captain with a 2-handed weapon and a bow. 2 more Uruk Scouts. They're all marauders, the Uruk Scouts, so I won't keep repeating that. 2 Uruk Scouts with shield. And then your final warband was an Orc captain with a pick and a shield. And then 8 Orc warriors with pick, shield and spear. And then an Orc warrior with a 2-handed weapon. And then Army B, which was myself, 26 models, 8 bows. We've got Grishnak with a shield, who was my leader. And then we had 7 Orc warriors, a pick, shield and spear with Grishnak, and then an Orc with a 2-handed weapon. Warband 2 was Malhir, with 6 Uruk Scouts with a bow, 6 Uruk Scouts with shield, and then an independent hero as the Uruk drummer. And then Warband 3 was an Uruk Scout captain plus shield, plus an Uruk bow. Actually, the Uruk captain didn't have the bow in my warband.
Oh, did he not?
No.
Okay.
Or maybe we added it on and we didn't use it, but I remember saying we didn't have it. So then 2 Uruk Scouts with bow, and then 1 Uruk with shield.
Cool. So, yeah, as you've gotten from there, I know it's a long list, but basically it was Uruks and Orcs in a mixture of 2/3 Uruks, 1/3 Orcs. All of the bows on Uruks, because Uruk bows are quite nice. I mean, I have to take responsibility for this list because I wrote it. I would say that, so this is 800 points, 400 points apiece. Because of the way you have to split the 400 points apiece, it's not optimum, because it's basically like you can either fill up on Orcs and have points left over, or you can have an extra hero, which is what we've done with the Uruk captains. But if I was playing it as 800 points straight, we definitely wouldn't have one of those Uruk captains, and we would just have about 5 more Uruks with shields, 5 or 6 more Uruks with shields within that Uruk captain warband. So it is a bit limiting in that, but I thought on the whole this is quite good. What is that? It's 17 bows, isn't it, Ash?
Yep, 17 bows, and then obviously just cover the special rules that we had. Obviously, we covered the animosity before, which is the +1 to wound if an Orc and Uruk are in base contact with an enemy, and then make haste to Isengard, their pace is quickened, which gives you the free Marauder upgrade, and then also all of the Uruk Scouts, Malhir, Captains, and Ugluk also have Woodland Creature, which could have come in useful, but I don't think we played on any maps with trees, so it didn't really come into play.
Yeah. So that's the army. The idea is we've got lots of fight 4. We've got lots of strength 4. We've got the possibility for animosity. I think we've got 15 might. 16 bow shots, which are strength 3. So if we're against D5 opponents, that's really powerful. We've got the banner in our leader warband with Ugluk. We've got the drum in the other warband, which should hopefully be the one moving the other way round. There's a lot of things here which we felt could play in our factor. While at the same time, it's more we're giving ourselves advantages rather than denying it to others. Like if we took like a magic-based list or something like that, we didn't. For us and what we thought we wanted for a doubles tournament, we didn't feel like it was. I didn't want to bring the Witch King or something like that, and because you do quite often get new players going to this, and I think at a doubles, it's like almost like lower than a GBHL 80 in terms of like the fun aspect. Not that there isn't competition, and you don't want a new player that sat there and their one big hero in their 400 points list doesn't get to do anything for the whole game. So that was the mentality behind it. Be pretty good and be pretty competitive, while focusing on what we can do rather than those negatives, those feel bads. So I thought that was fitting. What did you think, Ash?
Yeah, I think it felt like it would have been a good all-round list. I think we expected having the ability to go in the middle would play a big factor into the games a bit more.
Yeah.
And I think, yeah, like you say, it was a good list to build a theme around as well, and just have a bit more fun with the list. Try something we maybe wouldn't have considered at a singles tournament. I know you've got your Witch King and Harad list down to a T at the minute, so it was a good chance to maybe try something new that we both hadn't tried before.
Very different for me. But so what I'm thinking, Ash, we'll do for this is we've got 5 games to go through. But I think there's going to be a lot of the same things to say for each one. So if we take it in turns going through each one, and then the other one can add in comments. But if we keep it focused on that game, what went right for us, what went wrong for us, and then the stuff that sort of applies to everything, we'll talk about in a big summary at the end. I think that will make the most sense for people trying to understand the gaming experience anyway. Yep?
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
Cool. Do you want to do game 1 or do you want to do game 2?
I can do game 1.
Okay, so
you've got a bit more experience with the game 2 list.
So
yeah,
I'll start us off with what it was. And I've got the victory points noted down if you need them. So this was a Ministerial and Rangers list, and I do apologise, we haven't got everybody's name because Warhammer World insist on using Best Coast pairings, and after the fact they won't let you through all the details, and I have misplaced my pad from the day. But so I do apologise to everybody's seconds, teammates, partners, whatever, if I haven't got everybody's name. I've tried to write them down where I've remembered. So game 1 was against a Ministerial and Rangers list, and one of the teammates was Tom Scott. And the scenario was take and hold, which is where you have a central objective and you can split the opponent's army into Team A primary and Team A secondary, and then vice versa with Team B. It's all about the central objective. If you have 3 times as many models on the central objective, you can get a maximum of 7 victory points with decreasing amounts for it being more contested. You get 1 victory point for causing a wound on the enemy leader, 2 if you kill him. You get 1 victory point if the enemy force is broken at the end of the game, 3 if they're broken and you're not broken. There's some stuff about resistant to magic, but there was no magic in this game. So yeah, this is all about the central objective. You can lose every other aspect as long as you've got 3 times the amount of models. You'll walk away with a 7-5 victory. So on that note, Ash, do you want to take us through how the game unfolded?
Yep. So obviously we deployed in our deployments, and we sort of had a quick discussion, didn't we, at the beginning, that we would try and break the Rangers forced first, because obviously they had the weaker army, then trying to get the Ministerial army under control. So initially we set off with that plan in mind. However, the player that was playing the Rangers parked them in a building, so although I went a long way around it, we decided that we were just going to go into the middle and just attack the Ministerial force while the Rangers were stuck in that building. Obviously, I didn't listen straight away. I went on a bit of a detour, but I think in the end we managed to come together, and we absolutely. I felt bad because I think it was their first time at a tournament. I think it was a 10-0 victory, and yeah, we just engulfed the Ministerial force, and the Rangers just didn't have a chance because we'd taken the majority of their strength away. So yeah, I think it was a good good first game to have because we got that win under our belts. But I think it was a fairly easy opponent for our list. They didn't have a lot of stuff that would cause us problems. They didn't have anything that would cause terror, so the courage of our orcs didn't really come into account. And I think as a first game, we played quite well together, and we managed to draw them to separate their forces. And then we came together and just took out one of their forces. And I think it was a good game to have as our first game.
Yeah, so things I would add is that a lot of their force was bows, and taken hold is all about getting to the centre first, so that doesn't really allow you to sit back and shoot, so that was a big negative for them. In terms of army building, only one of their forces had march, and so that caused issues for them as well. And me and Ash were just very much, we're going to get to the centre first. Ash got there in force, and he sort of made sure the force that we were going to pick on couldn't really get round on his side. And then I just said to him, look, you take the centre. I'm going to deal with the other one and make sure he doesn't become a factor. And as Ash said, I think it was one of their first or an early tournament for them. And unfortunately, they were just, I don't think they made any massive strategic mistakes other than leaving archers on the second story. You really don't want to be doing that in this game mode. But they did, like, at one point, they had priority and they charged in and they put their captain on horse, who's only fight 4. Right on the edge of the combat line. It's got a really big base. I can move 8 inches. And I put Ugluk and like 3 other models on it and then did a heroic combat. And then from that point on, everything was just, I took out the captain and then everything was heavily in my favour. I will say not everything went my way. I thought after that flank was just going to completely disintegrate, but we were fighting right up until the end. But because it did go more my way, I was able to send, maybe 20% of my force to help Ash and Faramir, who was leading the other contingent. We just overwhelmed, really, didn't we, Ash?
Yeah, and the only person who really came into effect was obviously Frodo, who managed to get the ring on and move through some combats and get into Malhir and hold him up a bit. But other than that, we managed to outflank them in the middle, and in the end, it was just a case of we had more force there than they did.
I do have to say, absolutely top guys. It was a 10-0 victory to us, so it was quite one-sided. It's not somebody's got to lose their first match, but it's not nice to start the day off with such a heavy loss. So I did feel for them, but they took it with absolute class. It was a lovely game. Great opponents. Played in a really nice spirit. I think exactly as you want to play a doubles tournament, really. There's no nitpicking. It's just, all right, we're playing for intent here. I'm not going to measure whether that is a 20th of an inch out or whatever. Any other comments before we move on to game 2, Ash?
No, I think I'll just echo what you said. Really great bunch of guys and a really enjoyable game. I think they enjoyed it too, despite the loss. And I think, just really enjoyable, and it was good to get that. Although it was good to get that win under the belt for the first game to sort of ease us into playing together. Yeah.
So I will move us on to game 2, which I'm going to take you through. So game 2 was against Paul Hucklesby, and then also Matt, who is Mr. SBG over on YouTube. Go and check him out. He's got a report on his side of the tournament. Sounds like they had a good time and did quite well. And they were playing a Mordor Harad alliance. and we were doing Total Conquest. So their army was actually not too dissimilar to, sort of, if I were to take my singles list and make it a variant for doubles. So going back to one of my old favourites on the Harad side, there was a lot of Abrakan Guard. There was a lot of guys with bows and spears. There were a few Serpent or Haradrim Raiders with their lances. Suladan on horse, of course, with his glorious 6-inch banner. And then they had a Witch King. I don't think he was overly kitted out, but fully kitted out in terms of he had the crown, he had the horse, he had a decent amount of will and might. And then a load of black Numenorians supported by, were they Morannon Orcs or were they normal Orcs, Ash? I forget.
They were Morannon Orcs.
By Morannon Orcs. So two very different forces, but very capable of working together. But with some terror in there, you got the magic. You've got Suladan able to deal out some damage. So, it's not the optimum singles build, but certainly a good army. And so how this scenario starts with Total Conquest is that 2 of your warbands have to start in the center, and then you've got a load of objectives scattered around. I will just open the map quickly. Yeah, so you've got 1 objective in the center, and then you've got 4 which are in each of the quarters. The leader of your army starts in the center. And the same for the other side, and then the secondary of each force is deployed via Maelstrom. So on the face of it, this looks really good for us. So they had the role. We obviously had Ugluk as leader, and they had the role, and they had to have Suladan in the center. And I thought, fantastic. I'm really experienced with Harad, and I'm aware of the strengths of Isengard, and I was like, this should be an easy matchup for me against him. I've got 3 heroes, unless he really wants to expose Suladan. He's not going to be able to deal with those 3 heroes. I'm going to be able to cut through him. I've got fight 4 across the board. His Abrakan Guard can wound me on 4s, but I'm wounding him on 4s pretty much across the board because of the strength 4. So I was feeling really good about this, and I just thought we have to not have them have a real good Maelstrom and start with Mordor coming onto the board really quickly. So we get into the game. We sort of deploy in 2 sort of battle lines. We have got this horrible bit of terrain in the middle, which is just making everything difficult. Combats began really. I'll take us through the first 3 or so turns quickly. Ash is able to come up immediately, and we decide, look, the other person's not on the board yet. Let's bring on Ash immediately behind the Harad, and let's just wipe these guys out. Let's get them down to near 50%, and then we explode out because we've got the movement. We can do this. A total envelopment, and that's pretty much the way it went. And I don't think Mordor came on till about turn 3. So by the time Mordor came on, we had Harad in a full envelopment. And I do have to say, you should never blame an outcome of a game entirely on dice, because it's about giving yourself opportunity. But you'd be foolish if you thought that winning a game didn't at least come with some element of luck. If you roll 1s all day, you can't win a game no matter how much opportunity you give yourself. And honestly, I don't think they were winning a massive amount more, or we were winning a massive amount more. The difference was we just could not seem to roll 4s. And those belly boys as Abrakan Guard, I think there was one of them, considering they were in double envelopment for pretty much the entire game, there was one of them still standing at the end of the game. It was just incredible. I will hold my hand up. Mordor came on, and we got to choose where they came on, and we wanted to keep them in one place. So we put them sort of to the corner to the side, so they'd be about 2 turns away. And then we didn't want them all to be there, so we put some on the opposite side of the board. That may have been a mistake, that second bit, but I'll get on to that. I have to hold my hands up to the worst mistake I made all day. Witch King came on and instantly black darted a banner. I didn't have anyone touching him. That was a real rookie error due to the fact that I've been blessed with Suladan most of the time, and you don't really have to worry about protecting your banner to that degree. So yeah, that was a real bad mistake. But yeah, honestly, the tactic me and Ash came up with was just to hammer the Haradim, and then we could manage the rest of them and explode out. And just really, the Haradim never collapsed. And yeah, I don't, like I say, I don't want to put it on dice rolls, but when you are winning 6-7 combats a turn or more, and you need 4s to wound, and in every one you're rolling 2 to 3 dice and you don't get the 4s, it is hard to swallow. And I think had we known that we weren't going to be as successful in those combats as we were, you could have played it a different way. We could have spread out and been on the objectives, and maybe it goes a different way. But I still think when you've got the opportunity of 2-on-1 double envelopment, you take that. And we had all sorts of luck that just didn't go away. Like my captains, Ugluk killed the Witch King, which was lucky, and he failed all 3 of his fate. So we did have moments of luck, but it's just like, I would have preferred to have had that spread across the rest of the battlefield, really. Like, my Orc captain couldn't do anything. My Orc captain didn't do anything. We just couldn't break through, and I think it was very similar for Ash on the other side. And it wound up being a 1-6 loss to them. As much as I probably do sound a bit butthurt, and there's no other way to put it, because I just do think luck was so against us. A double envelopment trap in everything should work. I can't really fault the guys. They did the best with the very trying situation and managed to come out with a win. So as much as I do think the dice lost us our strategy, Paul and Matt won it with theirs, and you do have to give credit for that. So on that, yeah, 1-6 loss. Ash, any comments to add in alongside what I've been saying?
Yeah, I think it was a list we probably didn't want to come against, because obviously you've got the Witch King with his Black Numenorians who get terror, but then he's got Harbinger, so it's you -1 on your courage, and we've got we were needing 8s with Oryx and 7s with Ugluk, so it was difficult to get into combats with that other force. I think spreading them out was probably our downfall, because they then managed to secure the top 2 objectives, and then they actually managed to secure one of the bottom objectives by us as well. So I think that was a little bit of our downfall there, by perhaps not deploying them in a single bubble. I think we were trying to stop them from, hopefully stopping us from just absolutely wiping the Harad force off the table. But as you said, we just couldn't get those wins. Like, I can't remember how many times I managed to get the charge into the King.
Yeah, that's what I mean though with the spreading out. That is normally how you would play the scenario, but when you've got the opportunity to have the entirety of your force completely surround 50% of their force, I don't see how you don't take that, and 9 times out of 10 that comes off.
Yeah, and I think like you say, if the luck's not with you, maybe we held on to that too long. Maybe we should have used half of my force to go and get some objectives, but then the people who were on the objectives are the Black Numenorians, so you can't charge them anyway. So it's like, okay, well, that's where we fell apart a bit, is we just couldn't, unless we got the courage test down, we just couldn't charge the Numenorians. So even if we managed to get to objectives, there's nothing we could do anyway. Yeah,
so I mean, in conclusion, Paul and Matt were really nice guys. We actually wound up doing the quiz with them in the evening. There was no hard feelings, but I do say, for me, of all of the games, this was the most one. I was just like, how did we not win that? Because I'm with you on the Black Numenorians, but it's just like double envelopment on D4 models, and they're all fight 4 and we're all fight 4. I just don't know how it didn't work out for us, but it is what it is. Sometimes those games happen, don't they?
Yeah, and like you say, there's nothing you can do if you're not rolling 4s.
Yeah, there's no point spitting your dummy out, but I want to give you the real reaction of how I felt, and that's how I felt. So, on to game 3. Ash, I will explain to everyone what this is, and then you take us through it. So, we were against a couple of fine Scottish fellows that had travelled, as you might imagine, all the way from Scotland. Apologies, we don't have the second name, but it was Ethan Longhorn who was down as the team captain, and they were leading Lurtz's scouts. And we were doing No Escape, which is where you sort of have 2 of the half army start in the centre, and then everybody is leapfrogged. So as I was starting in the centre, I had an enemy force behind me, and the same for them. So in this, the game lasts until one of the forces is quartered. There is up to a maximum of 3 victory points for killing the enemy leader. There is up to a maximum of 5 victory points for breaking and remaining broken. And there is a maximum of 2 victory points for having a banner and them not having a banner. And 2 victory points if you killed the leader of the secondary force. A bit of a mirror match, but Lurtz's scouts is basically the same as us, but they don't have the orcs, so they don't get the animosity. So theirs was just all Urks plus Lurtz, and with similar Urk captains and stuff as us and banners. So Ash, on that note, why don't you take us through?
So I think this was a fun one to play because it was a good opponent. And also it was strange playing a similar list. Obviously, you were in the middle with Ugluk, and then the opponent was in the middle with Lurtz, and then I was on behind the opponent, and then the other guy was behind you. Turn 1, I think I was just in my mind. It was just let's just march. Get the drum and do a march and just get everybody into that back line as quick as possible. And I think they did a similar thing, but they didn't do the march. I think they just did the drum. So they were a bit slower getting to us. But I think in doing that, it sort of forced the guy in the middle to split his army, which I think helped you because then you could counter the threat from behind. And I think you sort of just decided to leave me to Team A to the primary, and then you just dealt with the secondary for the other team, so that I could. And I think that this game we just seemed to gel really well as a team, and I think that is what gave us that victory. I think we were fighting from turn 1 all the way to the end of the game in combats, which was really fun when. Sometimes in the doubles, like if it's an objective game or if one of you's in the middle, the other's somewhere else, there's a few turns where you sort of move in and then not doing anything, you're not really part of the action, whereas this one was like turn 1, bam, straight into the action. And it really, I think this is one of the best doubles scenarios to play because I think it is very I guess we're lucky because we had that 8-inch movement plus the march, so we were able to get up into those ranks.
So did they, though?
Yeah, so did they. So I think, but having that march helped us get the orcs up there as well. And I think this game I started to take advantage of animosity. Instead of using the orcs as spear support, I was getting the orcs into the combat to give me that +1 on the wounds, and I think that was really helping after the shock we had where we were struggling to roll the dice. I think this game, our dice rolling came back on, and the dice were on fire. I think we managed to do some serious damage. I think as a not the Urukai captain, I think, or and an orc killed Lurtz, which was quite a good achievement. I don't think you realised that until the end that had happened. But yeah, I think we just gelled really well in this game, and I think there's not really much tactic-wise. It was just smash into their force as quick as possible and try and pull his force away from yours so that you didn't get enveloped. We were doing the enveloping, which is hard when you can both march, but because we marched and got the 8-inch instead of the 6, we got that extra movement with our march and our drum over their movements. I think that helped us just get up there just that bit quicker.
I would disagree with one thing you've said in that it was not you fight one half and I fight the other. One of them, I think it was Ethan, who was the one started in front of me. He sent about half of his force to fight you and half of his force to fight me. I took an absolute hammering in this game. I remember because I wound up with only Ugluk, my Urk captain, my Orc captain, my banner, and one other Urk alive. Everybody else was dead on my side. I took an absolute hammering up. It was very... I totally agree with you in terms of the style of game. This really felt like, those sort of games you had when you were like 15, when it was like, let's just get the models out and we're just going to bash at each other. It was a real battle, and there was a few laughs about the confusion as to whose model was who. And because my infantry took such a hammering, I wound up like sort of trying to... I broke out on the southern side, sort of where... towards the board edge with my heroes and basically just executed their heroes. My two-handed axe captain had his best moment of the entire day where I just said, sod it, we're going two-handed, and just decapitated the two Urks in front of him. It was really fun.
Yeah, a really, really fun game. I must have done most of the killing then.
I did a lot of killing as well, but I bled for us, man. I bled for us for this victory, which was our biggest victory of the entire tournament and wound up being an 11-1 victory to us. Which, we're going to talk about it in more depth later on, but that at that point in the tournament put us on 2 major victories and 1 major loss. And you may have noticed that our major victories... We've got a lot of points, and that second game was a 1-6 loss, but still counts as a major victory under these conditions. I think that's less contentious than some of the others we'll talk about. But yeah, we'll put a pin in that, talking about the major minor losses thing, because it does come into it later in terms of how we feel about how things went. But yeah, a great game. Again, sorry that we've handed out a bit of a battering, but they were a real good laugh to play against, weren't they, Ash?
Yeah, a really good opponent, and yeah, it was my favourite game of the tournament, I think, that one.
Yeah, I think we won't tell all of our votes, but we did give them a best game vote because we really did enjoy it. I think it just, neither side played it poorly. It came down to, I think we had more heroes, and also we had spears and a banner, and they had no spears and a banner, and things didn't really go. I know you said some of the dice were hot, but that was more on the wounding side of things. But I think in terms of winning dual roll-offs, it was just a matter of we fairly consistently had an extra dice in there more often than not because of the spear supports. But yeah, anything else, Ash, before we move on to game 4?
No, nothing on that one.
So that was day 1. We have got some recordings from the tournament, but we'll see if we wind up actually adding them in. We had some problem with our equipment and stuff, but yeah, I'll have a listen to those recordings and see if we can fit them in. So you may or may not see them in this space or at the beginning, but to give you a brief overview, basically that evening we went back, we did the quiz, we met up with Paul and Matt, who were kind enough to let us join them as a team. Some beer, and I think you were on cider, weren't you, Ash?
Yeah, cider, which you call my girly drink.
Yeah, was consumed. It was a good laugh. We actually managed to get to bed by midnight. Pretty good going, I think, for lads away from their partners. And yeah, it was a very hot night though. I do remember waking up extremely dehydrated, which wasn't the best. But yeah, we went and had a decent breakfast that came with our hotel that we were staying at. lots of meat to fuel us through the day, and then headed back to Warhammer World, the home of our game, for games 4 and 5. And that morning game that we had was against Adam Sirens and Jason. I haven't got his name, but Jason, who some of you may recall way back in to the Grantham tournament last year, I think it was, or maybe even earlier. And he was one of the first people that came up and sort of said he'd listened to the podcast. So it was nice to see him again. I know he said he'd taken a bit of a break from the hobby, so it's nice to have him back. He's a great lad, and hopefully he's listening to this. So hi, Jason, if you are. And they were playing Corsairs and Harad, and the game we were having was Duel of Wits. Now, the Corsairs, it was what you can expect, really. It was a Delgamar, lots of throwing weapons, a decent smattering of crossbows. And then in the Harad force, it was Suladan. He also had, I forget his name. Who's the Swarm Protector guy, Ash? I've got him.
Raza or someone. Is it Raza?
Yes, Raza, yeah, who's the assassin guy. Can go up to fight 5 if he's fighting his target. He's got strike, 3 points of might. So, and I think their other hero in the Corsairs list was a bosun. So pretty good forces. These two traditional allies that go together, they work well. Good numbers, good amounts of throwing spears, some fight for where you need it, and some tools in terms of their heroes to get things done. But on the whole, with our strength 4, I felt good going into this. Now, there is a smaller side in that you may have noticed that since the last time we went there, this is actually a 5-game tournament as opposed to a 6-game tournament. And that means that they have to exclude one of the scenarios. So I'm just going to go through and quickly see which one is excluded. Yeah, so they've chosen to exclude Cornered and instead put in Duel of Wits. And I do have to say, Duel of Wits, I think I said this when I was at Ardacon, is my least favourite doubles scenario. I think it's played in a very similar way every time. People gang up on one person. It's pretty much impossible to enforce. They're not telling your opponent what your target is, because you may not cheat and say, look, it's that person, but your strategy is going to heavily suggest at least which half your target is in. Whereas I feel like Cornered, although I think especially if you make sure there's a piece of terrain in the centre of the table, which you could do for that round, I think is a bit of a classic doubles one. And in the past, I found it quite fun. So personally, I would exclude Duel of Wits. I can't remember what the single scenario where you've got an unknown one. It's Fog of War, I think it is, where you've got an unknown target. I don't like that as well, because you can wind up absolutely hammering the other force and still lose the game. But anyway, that aside, onto the game. I think it started off poorly in that I chose our deployment and I didn't really spot the significance of this fence. And basically, I said to Ash, look, let's try and gang up on one of them. And I kind of had to choose a side to go, so I went towards the Harad side. I thought that was the easier side. That was by Adam. He sort of saw this and set himself up in this little castle, which was a really good move in these fences. A great move, really, because it gave us a quandary, really, is does Ash assault that little fortress he's got there, and it's going to be literally impossible for him to break through, because every time he strikes blows, it's a 50-50, and more than likely the Corsairs are then going to be in his back. Or do we send him back against the Corsairs, and do we rely on me moving over there quickly? And we went for the latter. And I know Ash after the game said I disagreed with that, and maybe I think that's part of the learning, that if you do disagree, you've got to say it, because it's no good saying it after the match. But we went. That's the way we went. And the plan was for me to move across. So what wound up happening was they sort of saw that we were going to head that way. So the Harridim instantly jumped out of their fortress and then were standing with their backs on it as I was going past. And I was like, this is a golden opportunity for them to all be trapped. And then I sort of need to look at the game as a whole to give you an explanation really of what happened. So I'm going to give the end away a bit earlier than I would. Basically, at this point, this is the end of turn 1 and they've jumped out. So turn 2, I can charge into them and I can still keep sending my force to Ash. Ash is just in a straight fight with the Corsairs, which I thought would be reasonably even. I think to myself, there's plenty of time to get over there. So I send for one round, I send about half of my force and all my heroes into the Harridim. I think let's do some damage and then we'll move on. The other third of my force never stops moving towards Ash. And what happens is there's a sort of a weird time dilation, which I really didn't realise with a doubles game. Like, we've got like 2 hours 20, but what wound up happening is Ash is over there fighting for his life in these combats. And the combats are taking a long time. My turns are really quick, but everything's being slowed down by these combats. So it wound up being that my first reinforcements to Ash wound up arriving and getting in combat in only the third turn of the game. But the third turn of the game was about an hour and 50 minutes into the game. And the Corsairs had done quite well. And Suladan, because he's on horse, he had managed to get into the combats in the second turn. And that really, really affected things, getting that banner in there so early and gave them the advantage and really turned things against Ash. It was really weird. And Ash's force sort of fell apart because he had been having to fight them, and we did break, but then we killed Delgamar. And yeah, our army was falling apart. So the fact that we were separate was the reason we lost the game, but also that weird time dilation. In some respects it didn't matter because we had broken without that really mattering, if you see what I mean. But we wound up killing Delgamar. I lost none of my heroes. But Ash, unfortunately, you lost both of yours, didn't you? And as it turned out, their target was one of Ash's heroes, and our target was not Delgamar. It were for both of us. It was actually the bosun. So that wound up being a 6-2 loss to them. A good victory for them. They did nothing wrong. I really think this one comes down to, like, they won the game and we lost the game in terms of, I think if we had played some practice games, this would have come out very different. We would have understood the timings a bit more, and maybe I would have made a different decision on the deployment. I do think we made some real mistakes in this game, which if we had played practice games, maybe we wouldn't have made. And it was just a good win for them. Ash, have you got anything to add? I know that one's probably our most complicated one to walk through.
No, yeah, I think obviously I think I ended up with one model left on the table. Never mind just losing my heroes. So it was a bit of a tough one for me. I think I used Malhir probably too much, and then it turned out Malhir was their target. And I don't think they had Bosun. I think it was just a Corsair captain that I was aiming for. I put it down him. I think, obviously, I said at the end of the game, I felt like we should have stuck to our strategy and attacked one force. I think splitting your force in half, I think we might not have had that little bit of a weird time delay.
I mean, I have thought about this game more than any of the others, and the problem was you had the drum. But yeah, I think we focused very much on the decisions we made afterwards. But honestly, I think if there's a mistake we made, it was my choice of the deployments. Because if we had just said, okay, you march to me with your drum, all that would have happened was you would have wound up being between two armies entirely. I think the big mistake in this game was just down to me choosing the wrong deployment and Adam making a really good decision to go in those fences.
Yeah, I think so. And I think, looking back, if I played this scenario again, I think my aim would be to just get to the centre of the board and play it from there, because you actually get some extra points for being in the centre with your heroes.
Yeah. Well, I did. My guys were around there, but we had started the break. But yeah, we wound up getting some points for banner, and maybe were they broken, and that got us the other point as well. But yeah, with them having killed both their targets, it was the same person. It was wound up 6-2. This is the first instance I would say that I feel really, really aggrieved at the scoring system, because this typically at other events you need to have scored at least 5 more than your opponents, and I don't begrudge the loss. We lost the game and they won it. It's simple as. I don't think we really had bad luck either. We just got outplayed. It is what it is. But the scoring system, it just felt, when I realised it was also a major loss, even though it was only 4 points and they had only scored 6, it really felt like a kick in the teeth, because it was just like, I really did think, what was the point of the last 30 minutes of the game? Because like, we killed Delgamar, we made sure our banner survived, we kept on killing them. You know, it really did feel like we don't get anything out of that. And yeah, I do really take issue with rules as written in the match play guide. I hadn't realised, because these sort of things go over your head when it's your first tournament, but that most tournaments do not play this scoring system, and I can see why. It really, if the game's going against you, it really defeats the point in fighting until the last, because you're just doing the margin of victory thing. There are no tournament points for you realistically if they've got a decent advantage. And I don't think a 6-2. I don't think that is in anyone's book like, oh, you must have got hammered. What do you think?
Like a 3-0.
Well, you're giving the game away there, Ash. So moving on to the final game then, because we have this one is far more straightforward. Our final game, and again, I apologise, we don't have the second person's name, was against Josh Wheeler, and this was in Clash of Champions, and they were playing a Necromancer list, which was basically Necromancer. What was they had another hero that could do things, didn't they?
It was I'm not sure if it's the Nazgul. I think is he called the Nazgul?
Yeah, the Witch. He had the Witch King from the Necromancer list that can come back, and a load of Gundabads. And we played them in probably the worst scenario we could have possibly played them in, bearing in mind that as long as he's got might on him, the Witch King is impossible to kill as long as the Necromancer is alive. We played them in Clash of Champions, which I think is probably the only scenario I would have not wanted to play this list against, because their big strength is the Necromancer, and to an extent, Witch King. But in terms of troops, we've got Fight 4. They don't have Fight 4. They have Strength 4, but we don't have D6, so they're not getting an advantage on that. There's very little shooting. They had very little shooting. They had a few orcs knocking around, all their strength comes from their heroes. So Clash of Champions is a fantastic scenario for them. Basically, there is up to 7 victory points available for how many, if you've killed triple the amount of models of your opponent's leaders. There is 2 victory points for each enemy leader that has been killed in combat, one of your team's leaders, and 1 victory point if the enemy army is broken. So for us, really, there wasn't much chance of killing the enemy leaders. We needed to get more kills, ideally to break them. There's the friendly rivalry that if one of your leaders has got more wounds than the other one dealt out, you get +1 to wound. You've got a traditional deployment of 2 halves. So I'm just going to set the scene for Ash before he gets into it. Basically, going into it, we could see that we had a significant shooting advantage, but I can't remember what it's called, but the Necromancer can basically do an enhanced black dart. So we knew with 2 wound models with 1 fate, it would be very easy if we sent them out early for him to just black dart, black dart, black dart, black dart, and we would be dead very rapidly, and then they get 2 kills with their leaders and it's game over. So we knew we had to weigh that up. We really wanted to do some shooting against them, but we were on probably the busiest board we had been on all day. But we knew our troops could very much do the business against this army. So that's the scene. Ash, take us through the game and how it played out.
So yeah, it's deployed. We both get to deploy together, so we just deployed together. I think very early on we decided we had a nice piece of terrain that we could hopefully shoot out of, but I think, like you say, it was a very busy board, but also the Gundabag Orcs are quite hard to kill. I think we were needing 6s to kill them. Obviously, there's no point firing at the Nazgul because he can come back to life, as we found out. And
on a 2+.
Yeah, on a 2+, because of the Necromancer special rule. So normally it's a 3+, but I think because the Necromancer was there, it was a 2+. And I think, obviously, the Necromancer has got a lot of will, so he was quite hard to kill. I think, is it 14 or 15 will that he has?
Oh, no, way more than that. He starts on, 20, I think.
Okay, because we got him down to, I think, about 11. So we did a lot of wounds on him, and obviously he spent some will trying to do stuff. We decided that we were going to hide Grishnak and Ugluk because of the enhanced black dart. We maybe held them back a little bit too long. Maybe we did a really good move where we sort of pulled the Nazgul and the Necromancer to my side of the board, and we managed to sort of trap them in a little channel. And Mal here was just doing his job at just holding up the Necromancer. I think he was in combat with him for about 3 turns, just sapping his will, and I think he managed to do quite a lot of wounds on him because they just kept failing their will rolls. So they also had a spider, which obviously I think I spent too much might trying to get rid of when I should have just kept my might, because I think what did it in the end for us is we ran out of might and they had a bit of might left, so they could call those heroic moves, and they were able to cast their magic. And I think, is it Transfix that he has, where he managed to Transfix Ugluk for 2 or 3 turns, which obviously when you need Ugluk killing models, Grishnak was a bit too far behind at this point because he couldn't move as quick. So yeah, I think we just couldn't get enough kills, obviously. And then every time we seemed to get Grishnak and Ugluk in a fight, they would win the combat, but then they would just fail to wound. And when you really need them to kill, I think we spent a bit of might trying to do heroic combats, thinking, well, we could kill these guys and then we can heroic combat into them and get a few more kills. But I think every time we did that, they just failed it, and we were just burning that might away. But I don't think we played the game too bad, considering the opponent we had. Obviously, the Necromancer is probably the one leader you wouldn't want.
They admitted to us after the game, if we had come out early before the Necromancer sort of had things to deal with, they would have. It's the enhanced back dart is Chill Soul, and it's where if he gets I think it's a 5. You don't roll to wound, it's a straight wound, and he gets a 3 point of will every turn he can use. So every turn it was 2 or 3 will going out as a Chill Soul, and they admitted they would have just done that immediately. So we couldn't have gone out too much earlier.
No, and I think we did a good job at holding them up. I just think just the time aspect, we didn't have enough time to get those combats, and when we're in the combat, so Ugluk just didn't seem to be wanting to kill things. We killed the Witch King, and obviously he came back.
Yeah. Sorry, just quickly. There were 2 turns where we set up 2 heroic combats where we, like, the moment we weren't immobilized, we were like, okay, let's do 2 lots of heroic combats. And both times, if they had both come off, we would have been steadily in the lead. And I think in the last turn as well, this was how close it was. If it had come off, we would have almost certainly won the game by 1 point. And both times we just fluffed the dice rolls. Either Grishnak couldn't seem to win a fight, and Ugluk couldn't seem to kill anyone.
Yeah, and I think one thing we shouldn't have done is killed the Nazgul, because what we didn't realise is he can come back 6 inches from where he died, which meant he then just came behind our flank. And I think another mistake I made was I was putting 2 or 3 models in with severe support into the fight, and obviously that's just giving him more people to kill, when really I should have probably, and we found this recently doing some testing for the next the tournament we've just been to, I should have just put 1 model in and shielded, just to have those 2 dice, just to not let him kill any more than that 1 model, because putting more than 1 in, well, when they actually won their courage test, because again, terror with Harbinger, so it was difficult to get those terror checks. I think that's probably the weak point of our army, was anything with terror, and anything with terror and then Harbinger or anything like that, we just crumble, because you're needing to get 8s and 7s, which is very small on the statistic scale. So I think one thing I learned from the game as well is you don't need to charge those models, just get close to them and let them decide whether they want to charge you or not. And just try and prevent. I guess what we didn't want them to do is the Nazgul still had might. We didn't want him to heroic combat into another model, and we were trying to hold that up. But I think even then he's just, I suppose he could go into a lot more models then as well. So I think we shouldn't have. We should have tried to kept him alive instead of trying to kill him.
For me, it was definitely a mistake. We should have only ever put 1 model into the Witch King, and then we should have shielded, and that's what we should have done. And because I think at first we were worried about them doing heroic combats, but then we realised, they're not going to use that might other than to try and save him if they get a 1, because they know he's immortal as long as they've got might on him. So we unfortunately realised that a bit late on, and again, it's we couldn't have known we were going to fluff all our dice so badly, because our heroes, when we were doing these heroic combats, what we were doing is we were putting 1 model into 2. We were putting models all around them to make sure that they were trapped but not engaged in the combat. We were having a spear support, and then we had the banner. So effectively, we had 4 dice on 2, and we had fight skill advantage, and sometimes some might in hand. And obviously they had the option of shielding, which they did sometimes to give themselves 4 dice. But just consistently, it didn't go away. We didn't get the 6. That is what it is. I think, like, maybe in hindsight, we should have just put them into 1 model each every turn, and put either an Orc and a Rook in there to give us the +1 to wound, and just reliably every single turn got 1 kill. But we were getting immobilized so often by the Necromancer and not being able to tie him up. I think we were just desperate to get in on the scoreboard, and I think it wound up being that we had 4 kills to their 6 kills. I just think this was a game that was stacked against us because it was Clash of Champions and who their champions were. But Josh and his teammate were great to play against, and there was enjoyment in this game because although it was uphill against us, we really made it a fight, and we could have won the game. It was having had 2 losses already, we obviously knew we weren't going to be doing amazing. It was disappointing we couldn't come away with a win from it, but you've just got to accept it sometimes. It wasn't your weekend, and I do think we hope to do a little better. I was hoping at minimum to have 3 out of 2, and for this to wind up a 3-0 loss, it was a little sour. not as sour as realising that a 3-0 loss is a major loss. That was just, I think that's outrageous, is the way I'm going to put it. What do you think, Ash?
No, yeah, I think 3-0 loss is just ridiculous. I think,
obviously,
the game was really fun, great opponents. I think we got free dice. I think that they play a lot of Bad Moon Cafe or have some association with Bad Moon Cafe, which, when I looked into it, is like a cafe in the centre of London where people go and play tabletop games. Looks like a cool place. If any of the listeners are in London, go check it out. But yeah, I think it's just 3-0, and it's like that's a major loss. It's like, okay, is it? Because that just takes away the aspect of the game where you're trying to limit. If you're losing, then the game is to limit your opponent to scoring points against you, but it doesn't matter. We limited them to only scoring those 3 points, and I don't think there was anything else we could have done to get points, because we couldn't have killed the Necromancer, we couldn't have killed the Nazgul, and
unless they played stupid. You can kill the Necromancer if someone overexposes him very easily, but they didn't. They did play him well. I do have to say that.
Yeah, and I think we could maybe have got 1 victory point for broken, but then it's still 3-1 is still more than double, so it's still a major. So it's like, what do you do in that situation?
I thought they were broken. Let me just check on my phone, make sure I haven't got that wrong. No, it is down as 3. It is down as 3-0. But I was fairly sure we broke them, but maybe we didn't. But anyway, would have still been a major. But yeah, I just think when you hear 2 major victories and 3 major losses, it sounds like we got stomped a little. When at any other tournament, it's 2 major victories, 2 minor losses, and 1 major loss, which I think is more representative of the gaming weekend we had. I
think we played bad. I think we played quite well. I think we'll play better if we do another tournament together, because I think you can maybe trust me a bit more. You seemed a bit uneasy on trusting me at the beginning, but I think if we go to another one, we could play quite well.
To be fair, for that game 1, you didn't know all of our rules, so I did have to take it. Like, there's a reason for that.
And well, yeah, it took you till game 3 or 4. Well, then game 4, you sort of decided that you would be texting me across the table again. But I guess that we said that afterwards it's because you couldn't see my force. I was sort of hidden behind that building, so you couldn't really see what was going on.
I couldn't see, it was like Chinese whispers trying to figure out what on earth was going on behind that building. I couldn't see a thing. And it just, with the table we had, it felt obnoxious to be like, oh, can you move so I can have a chat? And it just seemed like the best option. But I don't know, maybe it wasn't. I think the reason it felt a bit frustrating is because it was tight. Many of these games were tight. And to not get that 1 victory point of the concession of it being a minor, I don't think our scoring was fair, to be honest. But I mean, it is what it is. Those were the tournament rules. But I don't like it, and it would seriously affect my opinion on whether I go to a tournament again or not. I disliked it that much, having played other tournaments where that's not used. But moving on, so yeah, that put us in not a great position in terms of 2 majors and 3 major losses. So yeah, and after this, I was sort of feeling, well, you know, the gaming side hasn't gone quite as well as we were hoping, but we've put a massive amount of effort into just being like really chill all weekend. I think you know, people who play me regularly and who listen to the podcast, you know, I do have a competitive edge to me within reason, within, like, you know, the framework of sportsmanship we try and champion here. But I think I was really, really chill for this whole weekend. We were giving out dice and Freddos and cards with links to the podcast. I really wasn't, if something wasn't outrageous, I really wasn't challenging it. And I think the same was true for you, Ash. We played in a really relaxed manner.
Yeah, and I think I always try to. But I think most sporting, I can't understand how people can win it. I don't understand what we can do to be nicer people to win a most sporting vote. I'd love to know at tournaments that we've been to in the past how many votes we actually get for most sporting. Sometimes I don't know whether I'll get knocked down for not really knowing some of the rules every now and again. These sort of things go through your head because I always feel like I'm a fair player, and I probably too nice, as you always say to me. Don't be nice. Maybe I'm too fair sometimes.
Well, it's like you don't. There's being nice, and then there's just letting someone take advantage of you on something they might not necessarily allow you to do the other side. Like for me, if somebody's moving 6 inches and it looks about 6 inches, I'm not getting out at this event. I'm not getting out the blooming thing. At a competitive event, I've probably already measured and have an idea of where 6 inches is. If you see the difference, I'm not nitpicking. If somebody wants to move a model back after they've moved half their army and we don't know where it came from, then I'm not going to allow that at any event, because it's just like the dude can fly; he can be anywhere. If you get what I mean. But one thing I will say is that I do feel like people played this more competitively than especially considering we were down the lower half of the tournament for pretty much the entire thing. I did feel, other than two of them, I don't apply this to, and I'm not going to name names, but I think the other 3 games we played, I did really kind of feel like people were playing pretty tight, and it felt more like a singles event. Like, there were, especially one set of our opponents, like, there was a lot of challenges on movements, and I kind of had to be like, oh, okay, and just readjust of like, all right, we need to be tighter on this. Whereas for me, it was kind of like, this is an event where quite literally I've had a few pints sort of thing. So that did feel a little bit off in terms of general vibe of what I was expecting. What did you think, Ash?
No, yeah, I think obviously I could only go on what you described it was like last time. But I think, yeah, even sometimes though in singles, I've not really had people question, oh, was that far? Can you just remeasure that sort of thing? So that did take me back a bit, because normally, like you say, even in a singles tournament, I'm not as nitpicky as that about things. It's like a couple like half an inch here and there is not really going to throw the game that much in certain circumstances. But yeah, I've not come across that. I came across some people. You always do, don't you? Though, with certain quirks about dice rolls and that. Sometimes, though, I think that's if you're going to stick to it, that's great. Stick to what you're saying, but it felt a bit more like people were actually there to win. Than what I was expecting.
I would definitely agree with that. Like, yeah, I mean, I think maybe half an inch, obviously, that's quite noticeable. But like, there was quite a few instances where I was like, okay, I'm moving him, and I measured it, and then I moved him, and then somebody and like they saw me do it, and then afterwards they're going, oh no, can we remeasure that? And it was just a bit like, you've just seen me do it, and like, I what's going on here, And and there were a couple of times. There was one game. It just did irritate me a bit. I realised what he was doing. It was my priority, and like I'd been playing in a really relaxed manner, and then I realised he was making suggestions to try and untrap his models, and I had to actually say to him, no, we're doing this one. because I realised what he was doing, and like he got away with it a couple of times because I was just in that chilled mode. I'm at an event where I'm clearly not going to win at this point, and I'm having a couple of drinks. And it's that kind of thing where it's like you're not cheating, but you're clearly you're playing for advantage there, aren't you?
Yeah, I think I come across that a lot where it's your priority and they're trying to dictate combats. Obviously, yeah.
I didn't.
As I'm getting experience, I'm picking up on it more where people are saying, "Oh, well, why don't we do this combat?" And it's like the banner first.
I was just compared to how it was last time. I was just very surprised to see it at this one. But anyway, so. The reason we're talking about that is because me and Ash were like, okay, the gaming's not gone as well as it is, but we do well on the soft votes. I really felt like we would do well on the soft votes. And to cut a long story short, we wound up getting only one best game, which that is obviously disappointing, but, maybe people played some people that were... really joyful. I don't know. I thought we played as kindly as you possibly can without being like, what's this guy's deal? Why is he being like this? I said to Ash, I can't play in a better spirit than I played this weekend, other than behaving like someone that's not me. But the one that really was not nice was we only wound up getting 2 best army votes. And, I could sit here and be like, oh, I'm so happy with that. And that's not what a podcast is about. So I do have to say, I wasn't happy with that. Like, we looked in the thing afterwards, and we're definitely not naming names because it's not fair. But there was an army we were aware of that didn't have bases. They had black bases. And I would say that their models, at least half of their army, was colour filled. It wasn't like edge highlighted and things like that. It was just base layers, and it was a bit worn. No shade whatsoever, but that's not the kind of army you expect to get best army votes. And they got 3 best army votes, and we only got 2. And it was just like, that was a real like, what? This is the most effort I've ever put into an army. We had a display board. We were getting compliments all weekend. And somebody that clearly wasn't there to try and compete in that category did better than us. It was just... It's unfair. I will say it straight. I think that's unfair. And I think it suggests people were dealing out best army votes for reasons other than who were the best looking armies they played. What do you think, Ash? I know I've been quite negative there. Is it too much, or?
I think there is probably some tactical side of it, but who isn't guilty of adding a bit of tactics in, especially when 50% of it is soft votes? It could, if you vote for an army that isn't going to get votes from other people, or you think isn't going to get votes from other people, it could boost you up the list. I guess everyone who played the people we insinuating against did the same thing. It sounds like over half of their games, people thought they had the best army. Like you say, we did the display board, but I think because you're moving around and the display board we did was like a thematic display board, it didn't really come into play as much to display the army to people. And I think
we made a real point of moving our wounded models onto it, though, didn't we?
Yeah.
Which I think drew attention to it.
But I think there should have been, like they do in normal tournaments, where at lunch you put your models on a table and everyone can come and have a look and they vote. But I guess because there's that, it's 50% of your, 25% of your votes for the army. I guess it goes on who you play. And I think, we didn't get into the painting competition. We didn't even realise we were being judged for that painting competition, so I'm not too sure how they judged that.
Yeah, so on the second day, there's a best army painting competition. And I went over with my army to put it in the cabinet, and the guy was like, "Oh, sorry, you haven't made the nomination." I was like, "What do you mean?" And he's like, "Oh, best army is a closed category here. We've been going round." And it was just a bit like, "What?" Like, I haven't even seen any of the judges at our table. We haven't had an opportunity to put the models out, displaying everything fully. Like, our hero models are significantly better than our troops models, and we've not seen anyone come and have a look at us when we've been playing for sure. And we weren't leaving our army out. So, I mean, looking at those armies that got best army and things, I don't think we were going to win it, but were we possibly as good as 9th, 8th, and 10th place? Yeah, I think if it was a public vote, we are in contention for it. And it was just a bit like, I was gutted at that, wasn't I? I was really deflated.
Yeah,
we didn't get
deflated, yeah.
That we didn't get a chance to display the army as we had brought it, and for people to have a public vote. And I don't dispute the results or anything, but again, long story short, we wound up actually going down after the soft votes. I don't know what dismal place we wound up being, but we wound up moving down about 4 or 5 places. And I know the same is true for like James Patterson and his teammate that he went with, Tom. And Tom, I've not met him before, but he seemed a really good laugh. And James is a really nice guy to play against. They did really, really well, and I think they only lost one game, and they should have been something like 4th. And they got none of the soft votes, and they had a display board. Their army was nice. As I say, I would vouch for them that they're nice to play against. And they didn't. They got I think they got 1 and 1 of the soft votes, so they plummeted down, and that was a real gutting moment for them as well. And yeah, I know for the people that did well, they really championed the format. But I wonder how many of us there are that, maybe we were people's third favourite game or third favourite army, and you get nothing for that. And it almost feels like someone saying you didn't have a good army and you're not fun to play against, doesn't it, Ash?
Yeah. A bit of a kick in the teeth when people are saying, "Oh, your army looks really cool. Oh, it goes together so well," and the people seem to be having a good game. Everyone seems really receptive to it, and then you come to the end, and it's like, oh, okay, and then you get a kick in the teeth when you go and look. Maybe you shouldn't go and look at what other people got, and you see people there that you'll think, well, no throwing shade at anyone, but the people we're talking about, they've admitted that they're not in the game to do that. They're in the game just to play the game.
Which enough.
Which is fair enough. But yeah, I think when the votes are like that, a bit of tactical voting, I think, comes into play there.
That is the thing that really didn't make sense, is I have never had so many people come over and look at the army and say complimentary things, and then to easily be in the bottom 20% when it comes to soft votes. I do have to say, I don't, 2 years down the line with more experience, been going to other events, I've been to competitive, I've been to fluffy events. I don't like the format. It just made me, I think it's easier to go to a competitive event and, it just don't go your way. And it's like, I can accept that. That's going to happen. But when you've put so much effort, more effort than you've ever put into an army, and and you don't get the votes, it's just like, I don't want to put myself through that again. That was genuine. I would say it's probably the biggest feel bad I've ever had in MESBG for me. That the weekend was banging, loved it, but not getting the recognition on the soft votes to a 50% standard, I think is the biggest low I've had in the whole hobby. What about you, Ash?
Yeah, I think I let those sort of things go in my head because I know I'm not, I guess, I think you put a bit more effort in because you did the display board and everything behind it. And I know that I'm just painting just to get models on the table, because if I paint to the standard of how I paint other models, we wouldn't have even had an army, I don't think. So it's still a kick in the teeth when you only get 2 votes, when people can give you a lot more than that. And if each person gets 2 votes, so out of 5 games, that's 10 opportunities to be voted, and then we only got 2.
Yeah.
So that sort of kicks you down a bit.
Like I say, at these big Warhammer World events, people do go interstellar in terms of the effort, and I'm not saying we were the best army there.
No,
I'm not saying we're in the top 5, but were we? We'll put the photos up. You guys can tell us what you think, whether we're absolutely deluded. I think in terms of theme, consistency, these are the things they say that it's marked on. It doesn't say the best paint job out there. Theme, consistency, the overall quality of the army, and the presentation. I feel we were easily in the top 25%, and we could have said, all right, we're taking a Witch King list. We're going to take something we're going to take Bjornings. We're going to go super competitive or whatever, and to try and broach between the two. Yeah, it just was like, maybe this isn't for me. But on that note, I think we
let's
should.
Stop with negative Nellies and let's.
Well, no, we're going to be more negative. We're going to do the
some
marking.
positives about the tournament of Warhammer World and how it's like nostalgic. A lot of us have been playing since we were kids, and a couple of the last time I was at Warhammer World, I was I think I was 10, 12 years old. So it's like 10, 20 years on, and it's still the same. It's still got that nostalgia. It's like, it's a great atmosphere to play games in. You've got good tables to play on, good scenery on the tables. It was really well run as an event. Those sort of things. It's like, it was really good. It's just, as a tournament, probably it's going to rank as one of our lower tournaments. But as an event and as a space and as a place to go, I think it's great. And I think if you live nearby within an hour or so and you can book a table, go play some games there, because I think you'll just have a brilliant day out.
Yeah, so positives for me, staff, 10 out of 10. General vibe and how people are outside of the games, 10 out of 10. The fact they do a quiz in the evening and everyone's up for a laugh, 10 out of 10. The venue, 10 out of 10. It's just, I don't think with the scoring system that they have, that it was pushing enough that this is a fun themey event. And I'll quickly say that I do think I've seen somebody else hosting a themey tournament, and what they've done is you can get 50% of your points from the game results, same as this. I think doing a different minor major, but what they've also done is that you score the other person's army out of 10. And you can give everybody 10s, and then you also score your opponent on sportsmanship out of 10. You can give everyone 0. You can give everyone 10s, and I think that is a much better system. I think it was Entmoot they've come up with it for his tournament. I think it's Entmoot Presents a Gathering. So credit to that. I think that's a great idea, because that means, like, if you are everybody's third favourite game, you're going to wind up getting 5 points a game. And I think that gives more of an opportunity of, like, I don't think people are going to be malicious and give you 5-0 scores unless you've been acting like an arse. So I think that gives an opportunity to avoid that feel bad that we experienced, that James experienced, and there will have been other people that felt, a bit worse for wear from the scoring system.
Yeah, and I think I really like that idea, but I think I would go on top of that, and I would say you vote for you give them the vote when you submit your score for the round.
Yeah,
because then you're basing it on the person, you're basing it on their army, and you're not adjusting it based on the people you play. You're basing it just objectively on the game you've just had, the army you've just played against, and I think that is quite a fair way to do it, because you could adjust it depending on where you end up in the tournament. You could go, actually, these people are above us, let's give them like a lower score, because then it pushes them down, that sort of thing. So I think I'm sure maybe they could be doing it that way at Entmoot's tournament, but I think if not, then I doubt that he listens to this. He's too busy doing his own podcast. But that's how I would do it. If we did say we wanted to do a tournament in the future and we were going to do a theme, I think even if you ever hold a tournament, do your best voting votes based on a number of 10. I think that. Yeah. And I think even best army votes, because you do, if you get a group of friends, they might all vote for the same person so that they win the best army. And I've not seen that happen, because some of the best armies that we've seen at tournaments, I agree, are really, really well painted models.
I mean, yeah, I would say that there are people who were, like, if we take this to an extreme, there are people who attended the tournament who got 0 best sporting and 0 best army votes. And I think for a fluffy event, there are very few people that deserve that scoring. And there will have been people that are nice people to play with a nicely presented army that do not deserve 0-0. And I think that's the issue. Is I think it should be like, somebody has just been, everybody's not had a nice thing to say about them. They're that guy to have to experience that feel bad, and maybe it's a wake up moment for them. But I think with this scoring system, it leaves, with so many attendees, I mean, it's like 60 odd attendees, it leaves 2 or more. I think it could have been up to 80. So up to 160 people, it leaves up to half of them with the opportunity to have a feel bad on that scoring at what should be a fluffy event. I think that's what I'm getting at. And, maybe to us, someone else is listening and being like, oh, you got 1 and 2 for the fluffy events. What are you complaining about? And yeah, I'm with you. Maybe you were more hard up for us. I just think for us, we put so much effort into the hobby side that it was a feel bad. But on to the scoring. Ash, I'm going to let you do the majority of the talking here, and I will interject if I strongly disagree. So it's been a while since we've done our official scoring. We have 5 categories. They are communication, timing and organisation, location, rules pack and tables, cost, awards and prizes, and then extra factor. They are all scored out of 10. And then it is averaged, and that is given the score. And with sort of 7 being our median of that's pretty damn good. If you get in an 8 or more, it's pretty exceptional. 5 adequate, and then less than 5, you're really getting into, I think there's some real room for improvement. So, Ash, on communication, timings, and organisation, what are you thinking here out of 10?
I think a 9.
Ooh, I'm not sure I agree with that.
What was it? Timings and communication?
I think
you could knock it down, actually, because it was quite woolly leading up to the event of how were lists going to be submitted, what were sort of the run-ins of things. But I think actually at the event, I think
you lose at least a point for the very poor communication on what was happening with the lists, and there didn't really seem to be any confirmation on it. And then secondly, I think you lose a point for it being best coast pairings, which is just not an optimum choice. I hate the fact you can't look back and see all the details of your day. But I think it was ran really well to time, wasn't it? And the organisation on the day was excellent. So those are my points. With that said, what sort of score are you thinking, Ash?
Okay, yeah, I think maybe we knock it down to a 7.
Okay, a 7. Location.
Yeah, location, obviously, I think a 10.
Yeah.
I think you can't get better than Warhammer World, surely.
we've never really given better than a 10. I mean, they do have the parking. I think a 9 because there's no real options of shops in terms of immediately nearby.
Okay, I guess though there is food there.
There is food there, but you're kind of held captive.
Okay, all right.
But a 9 is a very, very high score. Like I don't think we've ever given a 10.
Okay.
Rules pack and tables. I personally felt like the tables were a bit busy. Like there was a lot of terrain on them. There wasn't a lot of trees. And I've obviously made my feelings quite clear on the rules pack. So that's my input, Ash. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think the tables tended to be quite similar scenery. Obviously, a lot of it was the Osgiliath pack. So that didn't seem that varied. Obviously, I think it was well set out, and we're obviously used to tournaments where they don't have a lot of terrain to probably spread around the tables. So that's probably why it was a bit busier than normal. I think for a doubles tournament, it probably was a bit busy because we had 54 models, and then our average opponent probably had 50 odd as well. So that's 100 models on the table. It starts to get a bit crowded. Obviously, the match play rules probably need a bit of a revise. I can see why people are sort of moving it over to 5 and above is a major.
So score, what are you thinking for score?
I would probably say a 5.
That's exactly what I was thinking. It wasn't a shambles or anything, but yeah, I think double scenarios already don't really favour shooting, and with the amount of terrain, it was just like you probably shouldn't have brought any bows. I don't see why there's not more trees. And yeah, I think the Throne of Skulls style scoring needs a rethink. I don't like it at all, having experienced other tournaments. So I agree with the 5. We're putting in a 5. Costs, awards, and prizes. I personally think it's great value. You get lunch on both days. It's a shame it's no longer 6 games. The awards are top notch. You get those really cool Games Workshop exclusive One Ring things. There's a lot of prize support. I think the best in each category thing, where the best who's gone 1 and 3, 4 and whatever, you follow me. The one on each scoring level, I think that's
that was a new addition, wasn't it, for this year?
I think that's pretty irrelevant. I don't really care if I came as the best 1 and 4.
I think you only got a little piece of paper, didn't you? Like a certificate to put on your wall.
I do. I think the nominations thing for Best Army is really nice, but I disagree with the way it's awarded. I think it should be an open vote, or give people an opportunity to put their armies out and be properly inspected. But that said, I'm thinking a high score for this. What do you think, Ash? I'll let you have the final say.
Yeah, I think as an event, it was good. So I would say 8.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And then extra factors. So this is everything. This is how we felt about it. This is the people we played. I guess this is the additional social stuff as well. It's just anything, really. Anything that we particularly liked or we particularly disliked. I would pitch my tent somewhere at a 6 or a 7 because it just had too many feel bads, but then there are just like a load of really good things like that are outstanding, like you say, it being at Warhammer World. But that's my piece, Ash.
Yeah, I think obviously it's at Warhammer World. You get the free admission to the exhibition, which I think they give you enough time in the day that you can go and do that. We did it at the end. Which I think if you go to Warhammer World regularly, it's probably not not an amazing thing. But I think if you, like me, I haven't been for 20 years, it was great to see some of the stuff was there when I last went, and some of the stuff is obviously evolved, and just like the size of the dioramas, it's always cool to see a diorama, especially on those scales. I think the quiz on the night, I think that was a good addition because it gets you sort of socialising as well with the other players. Bugman's, obviously, I think the food in Bugman's itself wasn't great. We didn't eat it, but I think the food in Bugman's wasn't probably to the level you'd probably expect. I think there's some lackluster there. Obviously, having the shop and being able to go buy Forge World stuff, I know it can end up in an expensive day. But I think probably an 8.5, maybe pushing a 9, because it's just that, I think that nostalgia feeling you don't really get with any other place. Like you're playing within the walls of a castle almost.
So, shall I meet you in the middle there, and we'll go 7.5?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're getting low.
I told you I felt 6 to 7 for me, just because the rules pack and stuff. It like,
yeah, I suppose.
I mean, I'm
talking
not
about the extras, though, aren't we?
We're talking about everything.
Oh, everything. Okay.
Everything can play a factor in this. Like, I've gone to a tournament that I thought wasn't very good, but I had a really good time and I gave it a good score. But for me, like, I'll add up the final score quickly. Plus, so the final score we come out with is a 7.3. Which for me, I think that is representative of kind of how I feel. This was one of the best weekends I've had in a long time in terms of the hobby of having a laugh with one of my closest mates, Ash, seeing some of my other friends that I see at tournaments, having a good laugh in the evening with some beers, being in like just the super cool environment. The energy of this staff is infectious. But I do think the rules pack is sending a slightly mixed message, and I think that came across in some of our games. I think our army choice felt a bit like, I don't think this is an uncompetitive army. I think it's a fairly good army, but at points it felt a bit lackluster, especially when I was looking at the people that, say we had done better and we had played some of the people that came near the top. They were playing really, really competitive armies, and yeah, I think they need to have another look at the rules pack. I just don't think it quite works for what it felt like. Maybe it was because it was immediately post-COVID lockdown. People were just really happy to be out, and that added to that vibe. But I didn't see it there this time. There was one or two, like the Scottish guys, that like absolutely symbolised that vibe, and that's why they got one of our best game votes. But yeah, Ash, I'll let you do your summary, and then we'll close this thing out.
Yeah, I think maybe they're rewriting the match play guide because I think they're sold out and no one can get a copy, or maybe they've just come to the end of the run and they can't bother to print anymore. I'm hoping that they're rewriting it and that hopefully we can consider going next year because I had a good time. I think, yeah, like you say, a couple of guys there just really envisions what that tournament should be about. It's fluff, isn't it? It's not competitive. You're not going to a GBA HL 100 and you're not trying to jibe to get to the top of the league. You win a really cool trophy. But at the end of the day, you're having a great weekend out playing, rolling dice and playing with little toy soldiers with your mates. They need to fluff it up a bit more, I think.
Well, yeah, I mean,
I don't have a better way of explaining that. They just need to fluff it up a bit more. And like you say, some of the points we've come across where you found where Entmoot's doing his tournament of doing the votes 1 to 10, 0 to 10, I think that would maybe help towards changing the dynamic of the tournament. I think rewriting that rule on major minor, I think would, and I can see why TOs do the other way because, like you say, 3-0 or 3-1. and that's a major loss.
Yeah,
It's
I mean,
like-
I just so people don't get the wrong end of the stick, because I know you don't think this either. I see where you're coming from. That we viewed it as a beers, dice, laughs, and if we do well, all the better for it. Let's see some cool armies. And it's fine to have it competitive events. Like, God knows how many of these I've done where I've been going to a 90. Like, I think I said to one before, I'm going to try and win this. And there will be tournaments like that. But we didn't, when people are putting in a big investment to go to a 2-day at Warhammer World, which is half the points are meant to be fluff points, it's not meant to be that, is it? It is meant to be beers, dice, and laughs.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, when you're paying what, £45 was it, and half the points from your opponent or opponents, it's like, okay, yeah, this is more of a beers and dice game than okay, I'm going to take a ultra meta list and just try and crush everyone.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing is, what we're getting at here is, I don't think we ever, there is especially when you go to local tournaments, there does consistently seem to be a pool of people that win best sporting, and I guess it's law of averages in terms of you're the average person that people really like, and you go to enough of these and you realize maybe that just isn't me, but it don't mean I'm a bad person to play against. And I just think when you go to an event like this, it is the pack's fault that it allows so many people to potentially be getting a message, maybe you are some kind of problem. Because I mean, if somebody's listening and they played against us and they particularly didn't enjoy it, I'd really love to hear from you, because that was not what we wanted to do at all. And I don't think it was what we were doing, but I'd like to be corrected if I'm wrong, so that I don't do that again in future, because I did think we were having quite a light-hearted day. And, I think we'd have to be quite delusional to completely misread the vibe we're putting out, Ash. What do you think?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I think... Yeah, like you say, if there's anyone listening that we played and felt we could do something better on the sporting sense, yeah, reach out, let's have a conversation about it, and let's improve the game together.
Yeah. I think you do have to be open-minded like that. And, I mean, this is the thing with these votes, and why I have a problem with the pack, is it could just have been that those people all played like two groups of people where they were just like, I love these guys, and that's fair enough that they got your votes, and that's what I'm saying is a problem with the pack, and that's why I've been a Debbie Downer on the voting, and that's why Warhammer World Doubles 2024 gets a 7.3 out of 10 for us. For me, it's I'm not going back unless they change the pack. I do think it's really good value. But I think there's a very mixed message in the rules pack. And if I were to go again, I would want to bring a really aggressive list because of how the points have come out for me. And I don't think that's what this event should be. So that kind of defeats the point in going for me. Ash, give us your point of view, and then we'll say goodbye to all our fine listeners.
We'll stop our ranting. I think, echo what you said, but I think for me, I'm probably still caught up in the nostalgia of playing at Warhammer World after 20 odd years, and I can't wait for our next return visit there. Maybe we might be for 40k though. We're playing the cool 40k boards. Yeah,
no, fair enough, man. As I say, in terms of like enjoyment outside of the tournament aspect of it, it was 10 out of 10. I had such a good time. It was such a de-stressor. I had such a good laugh. It just felt like the scoring thing didn't match up for me in terms of that experience, and it was a bit of, I don't really know what the word is, where like on one end I'm feeling so great and on the other I'm feeling not so great. Like there was a real duality to it.
I guess it shows, just one more point, it shows how well TOs do at the local tournaments, how well it is actually run in terms of the tournaments and the rules. And I think the tournaments we go to, we've been to a couple where it's not not that great in terms of how they're run, or things have not gone quite smoothly. But I think it just shows a little game shop like Baldwin Brum, and you go and you can have probably as much fun or as a good time as somewhere like Warhammer World. I think it just shows how well the TOs do at these little events.
Yeah, I think what it is it's very important for your event to do what it says on the tin. Because of this spirit of gaming, you want as many people as possible approaching that gaming table at your event, knowing what the deal is. And I think that was kind of what felt a bit off. And the scoring system didn't help it. I think actually probably people's behaviour was probably actually the minor point of it. We probably wouldn't have said anything, I don't think, if the pointage thing didn't reinforce that worry. Like you're saying, were people doing tactical voting and things? It's the points thing that has made us think that way more, I think, if you get what I mean.
Yeah.
But
whereas in a normal tournament, it doesn't have an effect on most sporting.
Yeah. But there you go, everybody. Like, two unfiltered views. Me and Ash don't necessarily agree, but it's food for thought, really. I would definitely recommend going to an event at Warhammer World. And you know how I felt about it the first time. Great memory. And this is a great memory again as well. I don't regret going. It's just, that's how I feel. But, you know, it was all in a great weekend. And I think we made some friends as well. Added a few people on Facebook and stuff, and try and keep in contact and organise a game in the future.
And hopefully gain some more listeners.
Yeah, that's always decent. But if you've made it this far through the podcast, this has been a longer one. I think we're going to hit just over 2 hours. You know, thank you for sticking with us. Yeah, if you've made it this far through, you're obviously a hardcore fan. So thank you for being here with us. Hopefully we've offered something of some kind of insight and something a bit different as usual. Please do make sure you join the conversation. We love to hear from you, and we love to hear dissenting views, especially because that always stirs the next conversation. Anything from you, Ash, and then we're going to say goodbye.
No, I think we've covered everything, and we cut it short now for the listeners to go and have a breather from our ramblings.
Yeah, cheers everyone. I hope you find some time to roll some dice, paint some miniatures, and we'll talk to you all next time.
Catch you at a tournament soon.